Thank you, Chair. For this, it's strange when you hear your own voice. Ordinarily, I'd be using a PowerPoint presentation. I made some assumptions that I might be able to do that tonight, so please forgive me. I might have to put my head down to look at my notes from time to time. The purpose for me to come tonight is to tell you some proposals that we have with regards to the sirens that we have for Broadmoor. We have 13 sirens located in and around the area, within 7.1 miles from the hospital itself. The nearest one, of course, here is on top of the car park, I think a few hundred yards from us. And most people, I suspect, will be very familiar with the sound of that siren every Monday morning when it's tested at 10 o'clock. And this is very true of the other 12 sirens that we have located in the 8 other parish council areas. We had a survey carried out last year to look at the condition of those sirens, and if I can take you back to 1952, for those that have either read about it or might remember it, in 1952 there was an escape from Broadmoor, and tragically a young girl was killed by the man that escaped. As a result of the quite natural feelings that existed at the time in all of the communities which were in and around Broadmoor, and when I say in and around Broadmoor, I include those places which were quite far away, 7 miles away. It was decided that there had to be some sort of warning system in place to alert communities, but in particular schools. And this is how the Broadmoor Sirens came about. So the technology was installed in 1952, and that technology is pretty much what we've got today. It is the old air raid siren. It uses British Telecom copper wiring. The problem with copper wiring is that it decays, it also gets stolen, and British Telecom don't support it anymore. They're very much into fibre optics. And the problem we have with the existing sirens, that if faults develop, and I think you've had some faults here in Camberley, they're very difficult to repair, and they're very, very costly. And where we are at the moment now with British Telecom is that they're saying to us, we can no longer provide support to you unless you move across to fibre optics. So we commissioned an investigation or an investigative report by an independent contractor to look at our 13 sirens and to give us an idea of how much it would cost to replace them all using modern fibre optic technology, but also to look at some other options which included a partial decommission to a full decommission. And decommissioning does cost money in itself. So this is ultimately all about how much is it going to cost and is it the right thing to do. The cost to do a full refurbishment of the sirens is circa £250,000. And when I say circa, that was the price that was given to us a year ago. And things change fairly rapidly. The market itself, when it comes to technology, is ever changing and ever increasing in cost. And now that was for a like-for-like replacement. If we look at the modern sirens of today, they're actually more expensive than obviously the existing sirens we have. So the infrastructure is one cost, but the sirens themselves are another. So when I say £250,000, that's a fairly modest estimate at the moment. So we looked at the options as far as a full refurbishment to a partial refurbishment or partial decommissioning, and we also considered doing nothing, and doing nothing was no longer an option, partly because of course we would have sirens that wouldn't work and communities would believe that they're working when they're not working, and sometimes they might even go off when they shouldn't go off. So we were in a position where we had to make we had to make some choices, and those choices were to look at spending public money, and is it worth it in today's looking at Broadmoor and the environment we live in today. And so that's where I'd like to sort of start with, just looking at Broadmoor, where it is today, how it looks compared to 1952, what some of the issues have been since 1952, and what the future is for Broadmoor. So I think I'll probably take about maybe 15 minutes of your time, and I'm very welcome to take any questions from you either along the way or at the end. So please, this is where I start putting my head down just to look at my notes. I mentioned the escape in 1952. The patient at the time that escaped was a chap called John Straffen. He managed to climb onto a garden shed and then climb onto the wall, which was 10 feet high, and just jumped down, and he found himself in the community. That was in 1952. I think it's fair to say that the lowest of low secure establishments would never dream of having a 10-foot wall to contain anything in it, whether it be people or valuables. So in 1952, there wasn't a great deal of learning that came out of that. The greatest learning came some 50 years later in 2001. But a few years prior to that, in 1993, we had our last escape, and the chap that escaped then was a very agile man who saw an opportunity to climb a camera lamppost. The lamppost was situated about 8 feet away from a single fence, and he was able to jump onto the fence, climb down the other side, and run away. Not too different from the first one. So what's happened since 1993 was an investigation into the security at Ashworth Hospital, which is one of our partner hospitals up in Liverpool. There'd been a series of concerns around the security at Ashworth, and as a result, there was a very fundamental top-to-toe review of security in the 3 high secure hospitals, which also includes Rampton, which is in Nottinghamshire. There were some really expensive and very radical measures to improve security in high secure hospitals. The gentleman that was charged to carry out the review was a chap called Sir Richard Tilt. He was chair of the prison authority at the time in England. And what he wanted to do was to align security in high secure hospitals to be something more akin to what you might find in a prison. And I think it's fair to say, if you look at Broadmoor today, you would recognise something that looks more like a prison than looks more like a hospital. So the category of security that we are all required to comply with in the 3 high secure hospitals is that we have to be category B compliant. So if the highest of high secure prisons is a category A prison, the next one down is a category B prison. In addition to that, there were some other recommendations that Sir Richard Tilt made with regards to not just the physical security, but the procedural and the relational security that had to be in place. If I talk about procedural, I think it's fairly straightforward. You'll understand that's how we do things and the rules and processes that have to be in place for the way that we manage our patients. The relational stuff, relational security, is all about how well we know our patients. And that's a really important thing for us at Broadmoor. We have 200 patients at Broadmoor, thereabouts. We have a capacity for 210 beds, but we have typically between 195 and 200 patients at Broadmoor at any one time. We know those patients intimately. We risk assess them intimately. They are managed in a way which is sympathetic to their needs as patients, but they're also managed in a way which deals with risk. And risk is perhaps the greatest thing that we do, and the greatest thing we manage the best is that we look at risk. Now, if I can take you back to 1952, and actually through the 60s and into the early 70s, we had as many as 900 patients. Today we have 200 patients. So we're managing a very different patient group. The patients of yesteryear, the 900 patients that we had, many of them then perhaps would not be in a high secure hospital today. They'd probably be either in a medium secure unit or cared for in the community. The patients we have today, the 200 patients, are arguably more dangerous. And you are right to be of more concern about the patients that we have at Broadmoor. They're a very different group of patients. But I take us back to understanding those patients and understanding where the risks are and how we manage them. So this is where I've obviously taken my head off my notes and I need to look down again. But that's sort of the patient introduction. What is a Category B prison? Well, it has 2 fences. Each fence is 5.2 metres high. The distance between each fence is 7.5 metres. The fence has anti-climb device at the top, and it has an anti-climb device at the bottom as well. It has a perimeter intrusion detection system, which is a series of wires that run the entire perimeter of the fence. And if somebody tries to climb the fence or jumps on it or hits it, it sets off the PIDS, the perimeter intrusion detection system. And we have 270 cameras around the perimeter as we stand at the moment at Broadmoor, which will automatically turn and point to an area where that PID has been activated. We then have a response time, and we have staff that would respond to any PID activation. We have a good working relationship with Thames Valley Police, who would also attend in the event of such an activation, on the basis that we would phone them up and they'd come to us. And we have a response time of 6 minutes in the event of something like that happening. Have we had an attempted escape since 1993? No, we haven't. I think it's fair to say that if you look at our secure perimeter, it is formidable. And it would take a person with great talent, great time, planning, knowledge, support to be able to escape from Broadmoor. One might also look at a facilitated escape. Could somebody get in from the outside? Well, the outside fence has exactly the same protection measures on as does the inside fence, so the PIDs that I've just spoken about. We are audited on an annual basis by the prison service. This year in January we scored 97%, and in the last 2 years we scored 99% on each year. 97% is a fantastic score. The reason why we dipped 2% compared to the previous years was on an element of accounting rather than on security. But we've learned from that, and our accounting procedure has tightened up a little bit. We carry out 2 major exercises every year together with Thames Valley Police, the fire service and the ambulance service. We're looking at all manner of things. It could be dealing with the potential of an escape. It could be with civil unrest that's taken place within our establishment, or it could be some other major disaster where we need to test our contingency plans. And trust me, we have a contingency plan for everything. So if you can think of something that's really quite ridiculous that might happen, please try and me, but chances are we've probably got the contingency plan in place for that. We work very, very closely with the emergency planning teams at each of the local authorities, and I know that we work with your own here, and we also work very closely with Surrey Police. We have an arrangement in place which is called a school cascade system, that in the event of an escape from the hospital, in addition to the sirens being, the button being pressed at the moment, that we would also notify all of the schools in the local area. When I say the local area, I mean that does extend a long way out within the same area as the alarm can be heard. And that cascade system is tested at the beginning of each term, and then we do it randomly once each term, where we don't announce what's happening. We just basically ring the alarm, but we do that without ringing the alarm. So we phone the school to say the alarm has been activated, and we test the school's response to how they would be operating, and that's also done in conjunction with the local planning emergency teams. I think one of the questions I anticipate in doing these presentations, and I'm doing these to all of the 9 or 8 parish councils and your good selves that have sirens in the area, is to ask myself the question, could an escape ever happen again? And I have to put my hand on my heart and say I can't promise you that, but I can say with absolute conviction, with at least 99% certainty, that we will not have an escape from Broadmoor again. The Broadmoor of the future, the Broadmoor Hospital, that is to be rebuilt, and many of you may be aware of this, but we're spending £255 million to build a new hospital on the site. And if I had my PowerPoint up, I could show you a lot of photographs of yesterday, today, and what the future looks like. The difference between the Broadmoor of the future and the Broadmoor of now is that security has been designed, has been brought into the Broadmoor of today, whereas security is designed into the Broadmoor of the future. And security will run through every single brick, plaster, light bulb in the new hospital. Everything that we put in place is considered in terms of risk, whether that be something that a patient might get their hands on to facilitate an assault or potentially an escape, or whether it be looking at the doors, the windows, the concrete, and those things that could be breached by a patient attempting an escape. I'd like to give you some assurances today around our proposals. Of the 13 sirens that we have, we propose to do a partial decommission. We wish to retain the sirens in the local area to Broadmoor Hospital, which is Crowthorne, Sandhurst, Little Sandhurst. That means that of the 13 sirens that we have in place, we will be decommissioning 7 of those 13 sirens. If I had a map I could show you, but if I just tell you the areas that we're taking them away from, or what our proposals are to take them away from, are 2 in Woking, 1 in Bracknell, 1 in Wingfield Road, 1 in Bagshot, your own Camberley, and the other in Finch Hampstead. That leaves 6 remaining sirens at the moment covering the Sandhurst and Little Sandhurst area. The latest technology in sirens means that we probably can be much more efficient with the sirens that we have and reduce our numbers even more, not by virtue of the fact that we want to reduce the sirens, but the sirens are more efficient, can be heard a lot further away. I think it's fair to say that if you look at Sandhurst, and Little Sandhurst in particular, the siren they have at the moment, when yours isn't working, can be heard in Camberley. And with a more efficient siren, certainly in Sandhurst, Little Sandhurst, it's something that you're likely to hear here in Camberley anyway. So that's my little presentation. If I'd had my PowerPoint, I think I would have been slightly more better equipped to take you on the journey of where we are and what we're doing. I would like to ask if people have got any questions or concerns about the proposals that we make.
So, thank you very much, John. So if anybody has any questions, please. Keith.
Thank you. I'll have to kick my back to you, otherwise you won't hear me. But yeah, I live in West End, and I think it's quite reassuring in a way when that siren goes off on Monday mornings and we hear it. We know that Coldingley, which is a category C, does not have a siren. And if that siren sounded any other time, we'd know more. But also given, of course, that you said the police take 6 minutes to get there, that means any getaway cars at least gone 3 miles. I would have thought if they're going to make an exit with help, they're going to go towards the M3 or the A322 to get away onto the main truck roads. And if Bagshot is to lose its siren, which is what we pick up, local people won't be aware of it. And I think you will lose out on people observing something abnormal. So I just put that to you.
I take us back to our patients, the 200 patients that we have. We know them. We risk assess them. We know them intimately. We know their associates. We know their visitors. For our high-risk patients, we monitor their telephone calls. We monitor all mail for our patients. If there was to be a facilitated escape, it would require a communication from somebody speaking to our patient, whether that be the person representing the patient or whether it be a member of staff that might go rogue. We know those patients intimately. What I would say is that the environment today is a very different environment, and I said we've got 270 cameras on our perimeter, and that's from 2001 following the tilt recommendations. We pick any movement up, whether it touches our fence or whether it's on the outside or not. I can say with some confidence, particularly if you look at the environment in which you could mount a getaway from a getaway car, if that was possible, they would have to travel on foot some considerable distance to get to where they could get into a car. But for me, I've got great comfort and confidence that knowing our patients as well as we do, that we would know well in advance if they were trying that. As I say, we do listen to telephone calls and we do monitor well, and we do know when our patients are not necessarily planning something, but we know when they may be thinking about perhaps bringing some contraband into the hospital or something along those lines. So we certainly pick up on anything like that.
I'll take a slightly different view to Councillor Bush in that we have a lot of new people in this borough, and I would imagine that the vast majority of people don't even know what that siren is. I certainly didn't when I moved to the borough, and it's only perhaps in the last couple of years since I became a councillor that I do know what it is. And I think that with modern technology, without banging on about social media and all that sort of stuff, I think that there are far more efficient ways of getting the message out. You've mentioned this resilience about ringing schools and so on. As it so happens, I used to be a school governor until recently. I hadn't even heard, I know that Councillor White just said the same thing. As governors, we didn't know that that was in place. So, to be honest with you, the fact that you're considering taking the siren away from Cambury is of no concern to me whatsoever. But thanks for your presentation. Thank you.
I just pick up on one thing there, which I didn't refer to my notes, which is social media, and how would we, in the absence of sirens, how would we notify our communities, certainly those that don't have sirens, that if we were to have an escape, and this is the 0.1% of me that has to talk this way, but if we were to have an escape, how would we notify you? Well, we have a communications team within the West London Mental Health Trust who have relationships with local media, with national media. Of course, there is all manner of tweeting and texting and all sorts. There is a document which has come out from central government by the Cabinet Office, which is about how we can capitalise on mobile alerting of the future. And this is something which is freely available on the internet. Essentially, what the government are looking at doing is that if there is a national disaster, and I think it's fair to say if there was an escape from High Secure Hospital, it would be on par with something along those lines, is how they can geographically text everybody in a defined area. And this technology exists, and it's something that can be done. It's not in place at the moment, but this is a white paper produced by the government, but it's a future.
Thank you. I'm kind of torn with this one, if I'm to be honest, insofar as no matter which way you look at it, you're reducing your ability to alert the community. It's an absolute fact. And I disagree with Paul entirely that social media can possibly replace the siren.
I never suggested that.
It's the alerting schools alerts people for 40 odd weeks of the year for about 7 hours a day. So the lion's share of the year, that whole system helps no one. The alarm helps everybody that can hear it. You mentioned that you're replacing the hospital at the cost of 255 million. You said the cost of replacing the alarms is about 250k. Straight off the bat, that's 0.1% of the entire budget. If that was for the whole thing, you're actually only going to decommission half of it. So that becomes 0.05% of your budget. It won't be half of it because a lot of the cost will be central. So it probably comes down to 0.001% of your budget you're going to not attribute to providing the only alarming mechanism that can get to the largest community. And from a risk assessment perspective, I'm staggered that you would take that decision for such a very small part of a very large budget.
I'm grateful that I'm afraid the one thing I'm not good at is numbers and figures, and I can give you the raw data which I have done there. What I will say is managing risk and managing security is identifying where that risk is. The risk is from an escape. The risk therefore focuses on the fences, the walls, the alarms, the cameras, the lights, the staffing, knowing our patients, having sufficient staff on site. It's all about preventing things happening. The sirens are something that do provide assurance to communities, and I very much acknowledge that. And I think it's fair to say that what we want to do is to retain as much public confidence in Broadmoor as we possibly can. And me coming to you tonight is a part of trying to provide some assurance to you that in considering our proposals to decommission the sirens, that we measure that decision very carefully. And I use the term proposal rather than absolute. Nevertheless, sometimes there are difficult choices to have to be made, even though this is just £250,000 in the scheme of the overall hospital budget of 255 million. But nevertheless, it's money that we have to account for. And that money has to come from somewhere. It's not going to come out of the redevelopment budget, which the Department of Health has set aside. It has to come out of the capital budget for running the hospital as it stands at the moment. And if we take £250,000 away from that public purse at the moment, we have to find it from somewhere else. And it's not going to be coming from the redevelopment fund. So that's sort of combining the issues of managing the risk, which I say are minimal compared to how we manage the budget, which is actually quite a separate thing.
I think I'd like to ask a quick question, and then Chief Executive will have to ask one. Are you able to share with us how many attempted incursions, or can I call it excursions, there have been since '93, for example? Because that will give us an idea of that risk, presumably.
There have been no attempted escapes since 1993.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand that your reason for coming tonight is a formal consultation with the borough. I mean, if the borough were to write back to you and say, well, look, we understand where you're coming from, but actually to have no sirens within our borough boundaries is a concern to us. And the Bagshot one would seem a sensible one to leave in place, because I take the point that Councillor Bush has made around escape routes. Is there an opportunity for you to then reconsider how many you decommission, or is it a fait accompli and you've already decided?
Well, the decision to bring these proposals to you this evening are based on the senior management team at Broadmoor Hospital, of which I'm one of those members of staff, to look at what is right for the future, based on understanding all those things I've spoken about with regards to risk, but also with money. These are proposals. As I say, I'm going to a total of 9 councils. Some that are further away from yourselves may say yes or no. And what I can tell you is at the moment that I've been to Finchampstead, I've been to Wokingham, and I've been to Winkfield. And I have not had any objection from any of them. Now, they are slightly further away than you are, so I can understand perhaps they might have a different approach. But what I'd like to do is to put this in the round and get all the feedback from everyone. And then this will go back to my senior management team at Broadmoor, and we will obviously rethink, or at least discuss, the outcome from this public consultation.
So I'm right in thinking that we can respond to you formally with any concerns that the council may have regarding this, and those will be considered by your board.
Absolutely. We did have your MP isn't Dr. Lee, is it? Dr. Lee's Broadmoor Forest.
Our MP is Michael Gove.
Michael Gove, okay. Well, we did have an inquiry from one of the constituents for Dr. Philip Lee, who I think is Broadmoor Forest Council, who was asking pretty much the same question that you've given us there. The reply from our Chief Executive was pretty much the effect that this is a consultation process as we're looking at it. It's £250,000 of public money, and we've got to make good use of that money.
It'd be useful to know when the consultation ends,
My last meeting, I think, is on the 10th of July. I'd have to put my head down and check my facts again. But it's about the 10th of July, so I think if we look at the latter part of July, once we've done a sort of a synopsis of feeling. But I would certainly greatly appreciate something from yourselves before then, if you have concerns that you would like to share with me, and I can obviously take that to my team.
So, Chairman, if I could suggest that maybe the response that we make and the decision that we make tonight is that the Chief Executive be authorised to consult with the ward councillors as to their views concerning the presentation we've had tonight, and to respond formally on your behalf before the 10th of July.
All councillors, yeah. Sorry, a couple of more questions. Valerie first.
As a parish councillor as well, we are having a presentation at Windlesham Parish Council soon about the same thing, and don't want to preempt anything, but I would agree with what the Chief Executive said.
Thanks, Chairman.
I was just interested to know, given Councillor Dugan's breakdown of all those numbers, I mean, is it possible that somebody back at your base could work out what the actual cost per siren would be? So in terms of your 250,000 budget, can they break it down to do some sort of costing in that way?
There has been some costing, not quite so detailed. I think a large part of it is the distance, the coverage between the siren and the base station, if I can call it that. So it would probably be more expensive to have something that's located further away. The ballpark figure that I quoted there of £250,000 was for a complete replacement. A partial replacement was somewhere in the region of about £140,000.
Well, if you're all agreed, members, then we'd like to say thank you very much to John for the presentation, and we will take note of what everybody has to say about it and respond accordingly. So thank you very much. Are you agreed with that? Agreed. And John, from your point of view, you can either stay for the rest or you can go home to your dinner. It's your choice. Thank you.
Following the parish council consultations in 2014, the sirens remained in service, but the siren maintenance budget was abolished. This meant that any siren that failed was no longer repaired and brought back into service.
And it's a fail. Am I annoyed? Yes.
In 2016, a final decision on the future of the Broadmoor Sirens was made. As expected, this was to scrap all siren locations when the new hospital opens, which was scheduled for the end of 2018.
Oh no, look.
During the first part of 2018, failed sirens were now being physically removed, including the towers. The Mr. Matt and Mr. Chase siren tour of 2018 showed at least 5 sirens had already gone.
Not much to see now though. It's gone.
It's not good news for the remaining 8 sirens either. In autumn of 2018, other siren enthusiasts made a special visit to film Crowthorne Siren and Ascot Skate Park. Although these were quite reliable in the past, they both failed to operate. There's been a delay in the opening of the new hospital, so the old siren network has not been officially decommissioned yet. But after the new hospital is opened later in 2019, the remaining sirens, working or not, will then be removed. Only Siren G at the hospital will be kept but modernised. It will still be tested weekly but silently, and may have a new home other than opt off the communications mast. Alas, the end of the Broadmoor Sirens, as we once knew them, is now upon us.